Well, hello everybody and welcome to Matrix Media. I'm Beth Donnelly and I'm here with my business partner and co-author, Dagny Grant.
Hi, you guys. I'm really excited to be here with Petra and talk about the release of her third book in the series, the Billionaire Trilogy, titled Full Disclosure. This is going to be really fun, and we're excited to talk to you about it, Petra, and learn more about your journey with the books and where this one is headed.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
So, it's really great that we're all able to get together on one day. This is really cool. So I'm excited to have this conversation with you, Petra. But I just wanted to tell everybody a little bit about you first. So Petra Nicoll is an international best-selling author whose first book, Petra's Ashes, was hailed as a spellbinding memoir about her near-death experience and the spiritual journey that followed. She has since co-authored The Big Secret with Jack Canfield, Not Chicken Soup for the Soul series, and is published in the anthology Life Sparks, Life Stories to Illuminate, Inspire, and Ignite. And after that, she published her first novel, The Billionaire, The Continuum, followed by The Billionaire Soulmates, two really amazing books, and now The Billionaire Full Disclosure. So this is a trilogy. Right, Petra?
It is a trilogy. It is a trilogy. I had to stop myself from turning to not keep writing and continue. It had to stop somewhere. So
that was kind of my first question. Kind of came off of that idea. That what prompted your storyline for your trilogy? Was it progressive? Did you decide after the first book that you did the second one and the third? Or did you basically have this amazing idea for a really long story? And that's how it came about. Tell us about it.
I wish I had the whole thing. So what happened, and I think I shared the story with you before, Beth, and with Dagny as well. And by the way, you guys look great. So I'm so happy. Everybody's looking so fantastic. But, and I love that your little doggy is behind you, Beth. It's so adorable. It's so regal too, the way he holds his paws. He's so regal.
He has long legs.
So maybe you can recall the story came about when my partner Jerry told me he was trying to close a business deal in Los Angeles and was taken to a society where literally somebody had asked him to sign a contract. So in his next life, he would make all his money back. And upon hearing this, I was quite frankly in stitches on the floor. My training from India was such that, whatever karma, whatever you seeds you sow in this life, and the karma, you don't necessarily sign a contract to make your money back in another life. And when he told me this, I went to bed just still, laughing to myself and him. And I fell asleep and then woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning with this entire outline for this book. And I really didn't know exactly where I was going to go, but I knew that many of my spiritual lessons were possibly going to be in the book. And at that time, I didn't really even know how many spiritual lessons I had received from my teacher in India and how really wonderful of a venue this was to bring that out to people. And the feedback I've gotten since it's just been extraordinary. So so that's how it came about, and it just kept building and building and building.
Oh,
and that's always fun. What inspires a book, and then you were inspired to write the second book in the series. What specifically was your idea for the book for the third book in this series?
Well, the second one, Soulmates, my character, the first character, Derek Stryker, because it's about reincarnation and human trafficking and such things. And so he dies, and he's basically going through the life review, and he wants to come back as a beggar in Calcutta, But because he signed a contract with a secret society, he has to come back as a rich person and make all his money back, all 40 billion. But he does have a little bit of say of who he's going to be in his next life. And then on his 25th birthday, as Eli Evans, the next character that he incarnates into, right, or incarnates as, grows up in Oregon in a village called Brownsville near Eugene, Oregon, where I used to live. And and then, you know, the story progressed from there, because now we had to turn Eli into a superhero, and he met his you know, his love of his life. He met the love of his life, and he had to move forward now and be the rock star that he was meant to be. And then he discovered this massive human trafficking ring. And maybe you can remember that we were writing the book, and all the passages in the book were simultaneously had been already written when all this stuff went on with Weinstein and the Me Too movement in the last book. And now with Jeffrey Epstein, that was just too uncanny.
Right.
Yeah. So that was really bizarre. And we had just things in the book that we didn't even know were going to happen, and then they suddenly were on the news.
Wow, that actually was my next question. Jeffrey Epstein, because like you just said, you know, the timing was so uncanny for that to appear. Right after you had already written your book, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So tell us about your thoughts on that. Tell our audience what you thought. When
the synchronicities of all of that, how that just the universe is so interesting that way, isn't it?
Yes, and I mean, obviously, I mean, this has been going on for thousands of years,
right.
As you know. This isn't like something that just suddenly happened. It's been going on for a long time, and it's been a massive cover-up by very, very powerful people on the planet. And, you know, there has been sacrifices for a long, 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 long time. And so my character is this superhero, or this person reluctantly, like Neo in the Matrix. He doesn't really want the job to be the one, but he finally has to put his own ego and himself aside and become this service-oriented person. And so in my character, Eli Evans becomes this very insightful and enlightened being in the end, who decides to work for humanity and give back the education and the things he had now learned from his guide, which makes it really exciting. Those are all the things that I received from my guru.
which is how that works, right? It's people learn things, they pass it on, and then it passes on, and it passes on in many generations. I was talking about that with a friend recently, that you know, there's very little new thought. It's kind of recycled in our own terminology and in our own style, and it's it certainly is still very valuable nonetheless. You know, what doesn't resonate with one person will resonate with another, and I think that's fun. The folks that will pick up your book, and or hopefully they'll get all three. It'll be the right time for them to hear, you know, the things that you have to say. So that'll be really fun. Speaking of that, in this new book, Full Disclosure, you go into things like the alien agenda and Area 51, and here now there's this whole storming Area 51, you know, thing. Will you share some of that storyline with the folks that are checking this out right now?
Well, a long, long time ago, I was in Chula Vista, California, when I had a house in Mexico. And the woman that owned House of Munich, Anna Biletsky, took off and went to Russia one day and asked me to hold the fort down for her restaurant. And I really didn't know anything about the restaurant business, except that I had to wear one of those funny dresses that they wear in Bavaria, you know, called a dirndl. And she had just 3 weeks earlier met this man, Frank, who ended up to be an FBI agent.
Whoa.
And so I had been given audio tapes. You know, maybe the millennials don't remember audio tapes. but they used to be around. And I had these audio tapes about alien agenda that I received from Drunvalo Melchizedek when I did the Flower of Life workshop. And so suddenly I asked Frank, as he, visited the restaurant one evening, if this stuff is really true. And he said, oh yes, and then some. And I was just shocked. And the next day he came in again and asked me if we would take his son to Mexico. And it was a most bizarre experience, is when I realized that there was definitely something else going on, and perhaps, I'm being exposed to something that I shouldn't be really going into, but I became more and more curious. And then, of course, in Mexico, we had UFO sightings all the time. They were never broadcast in the United States, but it was all over television in Mexico, right? So I had been following that Richard, what's his name? Richard Greer or Stephen Greer's work for years and years and years. And so I thought, it would be pretty egotistical of humanity to believe that we're the only ones in this entire universe that have consciousness and that there's something else going on. So what do you think?
We were just talking about that this morning,
We were
Dagny.
actually just talking about it this morning. Isn't that interesting? Yeah,
There's Gracie.
Here's great. The idea that that we're alone in this vast multi-millions of galaxies is pretty arrogant. Is a good word. And naive and it would be, wouldn't that be sad to think that we were the only conscious intelligence life forms in such a vast universe.
Yeah.
I believe they're among us now, as we speak, just in,
We're also talking this morning about the possibility of an interference, maybe not an interference, maybe a helping hand from people from another universe during the days of the pyramids and all that kind of stuff, where people have a hard time explaining how they could build those. Maybe there was some help coming our way. I kind of feel like if there are people on other planets, they're probably just like we are here, on Earth. There are some good people and some bad people, probably some good and bad extraterrestrials as well. So it's worth it.
Yeah, that whole eclectic mix of beings, just like they're an eclectic mix of human souls, there's probably an eclectic mix of greys and reptilians and whatever else might be out there. It's playing with us.
What do you think, Petra?
What do I think about it?
Yeah.
Oh, I absolutely believe, well, I really wasn't given much of a choice. First of all, with my Mexico experience with, UFOs on TV, and also having been exposed to meditation for so many years. And then when you're meditating on the level that I meditated, 10 to 14 hours a day for 11 years, you learn pretty quickly that there is something else going on.
Yes.
In this universe, and that we are just a very small part of it. And so I would like to open, with the book, I wanted to open people's eyes a little bit, even, it is fiction, but I was able to write about things that are actually really going on.
Well, that's very exciting. All of these topics that you cover in your books are very exciting. And in reference to another topic, the Me Too movement, a lot of women are coming forward. And in your book, you're making a point that even if people abuse others, they have a chance to get it right in their next life. So if you could talk to us about that concept a little bit. I kind of think it sounds kind of cool. You get up to you messed up, and would you like to go down and try it again and see if you can't get it right this time? Sounds like a plan.
Well, I mean, I do intuitive coaching and biofeedback, and if I have a client who's been abused before, or who's on the other side of that.
Mhm.
There's always, it goes many, many, many generations back, as you know. So this isn't like something that just comes about in one life. There are many, many trails or little breadcrumbs or seeds that are already passed along, perhaps eight generations before. I mean, we have had in the past and even now massive issues with incest that is still going on. I mean, even in places where you never believe it is possible, it's happening. So I think that the conversation needs to be opened up, and that is through the Me Too movement. I do fear that the Me Too movement could go too far, where, you know, I worry. I have a 27-year-old boy, and I worry that he would, you know, perhaps if he made one wrong move with something, that's, you know, he could be accused of something. So there's that side as well with our boys, you know, because it is so easy now to come out and say something happened to me when perhaps it wasn't intentional, you know. That part of it, I think we have to stay in the middle somewhere, because I've heard of quite a few cases recently where people had been framed, and, you know, the story could get out that perhaps someone says I was molested or I was inappropriately touched, and then that person is immediately, you know, labeled as a sexual predator or something.
And it is really difficult, isn't it? Because so often women don't say anything because they're not believed. And so there's that balance there of when do we believe everybody? You know, how does that and yeah, you're right. It is a challenging balance to strike.
It really is very difficult, and we all have to be very honest with ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that part of it worries me slightly, but I'm sure we'll figure it out. As far as the alien agenda, you know, I want to go back to that for a minute, because that is the subject that really ignites me these days. I think at least from spiritual teachers that I follow that are in the world now, they all seem to agree that we have to rise to the next level. We as humanity has to rise to the next level. We have to become more conscious. We have to do the work now before they can actually really help us, because we have to be able to receive it. So if there is a race out there that wants to help us, we need to be ready and not be so violent.
Right.
And so afraid.
Yeah.
Because we're also afraid.
Yeah.
It's still a very fear-based agenda at the moment with humanity. So,
You really got that on the nose. Fear-based is pretty much says it all. And it will be great when love replaces that. We're not so afraid of everything.
One of the challenges I think that we face is that the response would be military and governmental, more than it would be from just, you know, the masses of citizenry. Although, again, talking about the word balance, is that if there's a welcoming and a fear, if there's a love and a welcoming and a fear that can be at least presented in a balanced energy, then perhaps it could still go okay. There could be some communication there, you know. It's but I would be a little concerned about our governments being wise enough to allow a peaceful connection, you know.
I think we need to work on how we listen to each other on this planet, and in all situations, and international situations, and if there are people from other planets, listening is a real important aspect to actually feeling empathy for others and coming to solutions together, not just this is the way I feel and don't listen to anything that anybody else has to say. So I think it'll come about. I think that consciousness of the world is creating a different atmosphere. So I'm hoping that works out.
Along those lines, with your character, Eli Evans being, like you said, kind of a superhero like Neo in the movie The Matrix, in what way did you do that intentionally to make that connection?
Well, in the beginning, when his spiritual guide, Michael, shows up on the scene, and you really don't know who Michael exactly is, and you really don't find that out right away. He just shows up in the mirror at first, and then, suddenly stands before him a few hours later. And so he puts him through a lot of cleansing. So the first thing he does, he isolates him for a while on his private island, where he learns how to do juice fasting and meditating and celibacy and all those kinds of things, and really goes inward. So that's one step, really cleaning up the body. Incidentally, we just finished a 21-day raw food group on Facebook. We thought 5 people would join us, and we had 43 people in the end. So
Wow.
But Beth can attest to that, because we even had to eat a raw food birthday cake. It was delicious.
It was very good. Very, very good.
So, and how did I do that? Eli begins to break through by, his father dies in the second book. His father passes away, and he's very close to his father, and his father shows up in spirit. Like very similarly to Black Panther in the movie, where he goes into the ceremony, and then his spirit guides appear and help him. And so he realizes that there is a very big world, or a very big astral or causal world out there that he has not really integrated into his physical life yet. And so he's transitioning from being a 5 sensory to a multi-sensory human, as Gary Zukav calls it in Seed of the Soul. And, as Gary Zukav stressed so much in that book, which I love this book, and I think it changed Oprah's life, this book, where, your soul, we all come with a soul purpose. But unfortunately, many of us go astray. And how do we go astray? We go astray because we focus on the external personality. And then we have to, then there's the paradigm in which we grow up in. And so we are swayed to the right. The personality takes over, and we no longer pay attention to what the soul really wants. And so if we can come together with the personality and the soul trajectory, the soul purpose, then we can find true happiness. And that's what happens to Eli in the book.
I think the appearance of Michael was one of my favorite parts in the first book. And he kind of goes further and further with Eli. So it's a very nice cleansing.
It is incredible. Don't you wish we all had a guy like Michael?
Yes.
Could just show up. I need something now. I'm stuck. His appearance was a little ominous at first, but then it all worked out just fine. Well, I see Jeremy Irons in a trench coat in foggy London walking up to Eli, who is 21 and is tall and blonde and gorgeous, and he just suddenly talks to him, and he's a spirit guide.
That's how you have a picture. Wow.
Yeah, it's a very posh British accent.
Oh, wow. Well, it might be on Netflix, huh? Do you have any ideas?
Could be.
So let me talk about one other thing. I know that you're a good friend of mine, and I know that you're very cutting edge on current topics that surround planet Earth. And so I'd like to talk about 2 current topics, and I know that you have them in your book. And so let's kind of relate it to the book. One is cryptocurrency, and the other is 5G. So if you could talk about those just in general, and then tell us how you handled them in your book.
Well, I became very intrigued with cryptocurrency when it first started, and then I immediately dismissed it and could still kick myself.
Right.
And I found out about it in 2010 and heard about it. You know, I could have probably saved all my friends. So I could have, you know, spent $100 on Bitcoin and then distribute it out and so forth. You know, the rest of the story went to $20,000 each from 10 cents or whatever. I did eventually get back in 2016 when Bitcoin was still $300 or so. And then, of course, you know, the story in 2017, December, January, into 2018, it reached 20,000. And so we had to figure out in the book how Eli was going to make his money back without depending on the secret society. And so the way we did it is with cryptocurrency, that one of his friends had convinced him to take all his tip money and buy Bitcoin, and his friend had it in his safe and again gave him the private keys to it. And, you know, and I'm an advocate of Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies, right, like Ripple and Ethereum and Litecoin and so forth. And I teach people how to do that, how to at least buy $100 worth of, you know, because you never know what can happen. Yeah. And so it's really fun. People are starting to reach out and say, hey, show me how to do this. It's really fun. So that's how Eli makes his 40 billion back.
40 billion. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. You can't have a rock star making 40 billion. The only rock star in the world today is Paul McCartney, that is a billionaire. That is the only rock star that's ever made it to that level. And that's because he's an amazing businessman as well. So,
yeah. And he's been doing it for a long time.
Yeah.
So how did you weave all of that into 5G?
Well, when somebody evolves spiritually, they also have a tendency to become more sensitive to vibration, to frequency. And in the second book, Michael tells him that he is going to help people with frequency through the music that he plays. And, you know, this is something that Carlos Santana and many musicians talk about. This is not new. And so in the very end, he does an interview with Rolling Stones where he lays it out, is that if people don't start to protect themselves with quartz crystals and different frequency of music, they're going to be affected by this 5G. And, you know, these towers are going up everywhere. And it's now in Europe, in some places, people are not wanting it in their cities. And so they're banning it in some places, but for how long this can last, nobody knows. I mean, it's really very serious. I mean, I have a hard time holding my iPhone in my hand without my hand going numb. And I don't think we've seen the effects yet of people wearing iPhones on their bodies, of what that can do to the body. We don't know yet. We have seen some evidence of cancer around the ear, by holding phones up against the ear. And we have seen, you know, people that have to live in verticages because they can't be around all this frequency.
Wow. Yeah. So you were talking about protective measures, quartz crystals and things like that?
Quartz crystals, and I wear this little guy here, this little gadget that has EMF protection. Oh. And then I have my EMF protective glasses, see? Oh, so I don't look in blue light. So then I have EMF protective earphones. So I'm really affected by it. And so I thought, well, this is something we need to write about and shed some light on.
How did you weave the story of 5G into your book?
Very good question, Beth. Dagny, this is a very good question. Eli becomes ultra sensitive and really sick in his LA apartment.
He gets sick?
Yeah, they put a tower up near his house, and he becomes violently ill, and they have to move. he and his wife,
Oh my.
girlfriend, and then they move. And so he talks about it, and Michael gives him some pretty good ideas of how to offset this issue and how to help people.
Wow. Well, you know, I think it just sounds like a fantastic book. The whole series is just incredibly fun and creative, and we're so excited that you have this series and that you've got this third book coming out. And would you let folks know who are watching us now know how to get a hold of you, how to get a hold of you, how to get a hold of the book?
Oh yeah, just go to my website at petranicoll.com. That's spelled Petranicoll. And I think there will be a link in this video as well for you to just click on. And we keep you updated on the website, and there will be book signing parties, and we will do a big launch. So hopefully, if you support me, then I'll make the bestseller list again. At least it always helps. And we are going to have a webinar as well with the lessons. Someone had read my book who is quite influential and said, you know, this is like the Celestine Prophecy, but on steroids. So you could take Eli's lessons out of the book and turn it into a webinar. So I'm doing that.
Oh, how fun! That's a great idea.
That's great. Yeah.
So and folks can learn how to connect with that as well on your website?
Yes, yes.
Fantastic,
yes.
fantastic.
Well, before we close, maybe you have some closing thoughts for our audience about your novel, about the Billionaire Full Disclosure. What would you like to leave them with?
And, you know, this is an interesting conversation because I had this exact conversation with my editor. She asked me, she said, well, how do you want to end this? I mean, you know, it can't be all doom and gloom, 5G and all this stuff that's going on in the planet.
It's heavy, yeah, it's heavy, yeah.
Plastics, etc., etc. I mean, and I said to her, I said, well, the thing is, a long time ago, one of my teachers said to me, this is all a hologram. It's not even real. We created with our mind. I know it feels really real to you, but you have to stay positive. You have to stay in a positive frame always and move a little slower and just watch. And if you watch and you eat healthy and you meditate and you practice, you know, positive thinking, whatever meditation or religion you follow, it doesn't matter. Just stay aligned with spirit and everything will work out for you. So I know we have a lot of turmoil, like with Dorian hitting the Bahamas. I mean, it's hard for people to listen to this when you say, you know, just stay positive, when your house was just flattened by a hurricane. It's very easy to go into the victim, isn't it? So I just would say, you know, you have to stay hopeful. You have to.
Right, we have to stay hopeful. Because that's one of the things that Beth and I talk about all the time, of course, is the two different streams of consciousness. And one is fear-based, you know, rolling that boat upstream as hard as they can, and then the other is love and allowing and just being, knowing that all is actually well, and being able to be in the flow. And we choose every minute. We choose which stream we're gonna flow with, and it's not always one or the other. Again, that whole world of, you know, world of balance is part of that as well. But yeah, just really fun. I'm really excited for your books coming out, and that you took the time to be with us today and talk to everybody about it. And we just wish you so much success with this book. And for everybody who's listening in right now, don't forget to go to Petra Nicoll, PetraNicoll.com to pick up this latest book. And if you haven't read the others in the series yet, The Continuum and Soulmates, we want you to pick those both up as well. And Petra's up to all kinds of really fun things. You can go learn more about the great fun things she's doing with her work there as well. So.
And as usual, Petra, this has been a thought-provoking conversation with you today, and so fun. It's always so fun.
Thank you, Beth. I love you. And Dagny, I wish you all the best. And I hope one of these days you're moving to Oregon.
I know, that would be so much fun. You never know. You never know, right?
We would have a lot of fun.
I think we would have a lot of fun too. Absolutely.
Keep out.
Absolutely.
Thanks very much. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you, Petra. Bye, everybody.